Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 449 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron, and today I am here with Kristina Forest, and this is a wonderful conversation about embracing your shitty first draft, writing funny dialogue, keeping track of characters' voices, struggles with outlines, and a whole bunch of other things. So please stick around for that. This was awesome and lovely, and you're going to love it. What has been going on around here? Oh my gosh, I fulfilled Unstuck. I fulfilled the Kickstarter. There are a couple of little hanging things left to do, like sending out the book plates, but I bought the stamps for the envelopes and I have the book plates and the envelopes and all of that. So I just need to sit down. Maybe tonight while I'm watching, maybe I'll turn on the television and watch something and do that. That sounds kind of fun. And there are a few people, I think I'm down to 3 people left that I do not have addresses for. So if by any chance you are listening to this, um, and you are not sure if you put your address into the Kickstarter and you supported me at the paperback or the hardcover level, please feel free to check. I have emailed all of the people for whom I don't have addresses. Please check your spam. 2 people I have emailed have not responded at all, so I feel like perhaps the email I sent asking them for their address has gone to spam. So I can't get out of spam, so check your spam. If I haven't sent you an email, if there's nothing in spam and you bought at the paperback or hardcover level that is coming to you, everything has been shipped and will take anywhere from 3 to 18 days. So who knows how long the book will take to get to you in a final paperback form or hardcover form, but it's on its way. If you got the ebook or the audiobook, you should have received it. So please check your email, check your Kickstarter emails, email me if you can't find anything at all. Let me know how I can help. And it has been awesome. Actually, it was pretty overwhelming to do all the fulfilling, but BookFunnel, God bless, BookFunnel makes it so easy to do a bulk delivery. However, I did not know they would cut me off after 500 emails of delivery that was there. It was on their website. It was clear. I just didn't see it. It was in all the fine, well, it wasn't even in fine print. It was just down on a page where I'd skimmed and I hadn't seen that. So on what was my Friday night, their Thursday middle of the night, I found that I had left a bunch of audiobook people to deliver it to off of the bulk delivery. And when I put them on, it put me over the 500 limit. So then I was just throttled until the next day when they upped my limit. But I got it. I made a way around it. I sent another Kickstarter update saying, here's where you can get the audiobook for those people. So I was able to get around it, but it's just a lot to manage and a lot to take care of. By this time next week, hopefully I will have all of the financial stuff in order and I will be able to tell you exactly how much I made from the Kickstarter. And I am very much looking forward to sharing that with you. Because I love transparency in all of this stuff. So that is going to, let's just say we'll do that next week and I will get as close as I can to actual real numbers. There may be like $20 here or there for postage that I haven't seen coming because I don't have all the stamps I need, all the international mailing stamps I need, but I'm very close because the store ran out. They did not have enough international stamps to sell me. Good problems all around. And what else? I had a 2-day awful migraine. It just absolutely chopped me down at the knees. And it took a day of pain, a day of recovery. And then yesterday I was real stupid too. So it was really 3 days of not very much fun, but I am back to 90% power and I like being at 90% or above. Don't we all? So that is where I am. I'm feeling a lot better. And interesting that did happen right after the fulfillment of the Kickstarter. I don't feel stress about things like that, but my body feels stress and will sometimes just again chop me down when it thinks I need to be chopped down. All right, we're going to get into the interview in a second here, but I do want to answer 2 Patreon questions. And here is your reminder that if you would like to join me on patreon.com/Rachel for $1 a month, you get the essay that I write every month and the back issues, which are like more than 60 of them now, probably. And you would never, no one's ever going to read all those essays unless I put them out in books. There are so many there. You could read to your heart's content. At $2 a month, You get to join Rachel Says Write, which has been phenomenal. We write at different times during the week, between 4 to 6 hours a week. I change the times, I change the days. The calendar is always available for people to look at for the next week. And you say, oh, I want to go write with Rachel. And then we write together for 2 hours or for 20 minutes or whatever you have available during that time. That's at the $2 level. And at the $5 a month level, I am your mini coach and I answer any question that you might have. And I have these two questions that we're hiding in Patreon because their new direct messages for some reason does not go to my email. So if you ever ask me a question and I don't answer it in a timely manner, please ping me in another way, email or something like that. So I will go check that. I'm trying to remember to check it, but I forgot. So these questions are old and I apologize about that. Here we go from Jenny first, who says, hi, Rachel, can you recommend some well-written ebook memoirs for me to read? I like memoirs about ordinary people who have overcome things we all encounter in our lives, like your Unstuck. I love your Life in Stitches too. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for liking both of my memoirs. I just had a few that popped to mind. The first one is I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jeanette McCurdy. You could argue she's not an ordinary person. She is technically a child star who writes about being a child star, but she writes about it in a very ordinary person way. And I think her writing is beautiful and so well done. She manages to inhabit the body and mind of herself as a child and not break that view. She chooses to go there with without having an, a narrator up above telling the reader about this child. We are just the child with that main character. And the way we ride through this story with that child is incredible. So if you haven't read that one, it's great. The audiobook I've heard is also wonderful, although I read it in ebook. And I just finished My Mess is a Bit of a Life. My Mess is a Bit of a Life. Who is that by? That is by Clickety Click as I flip pages here. My Mess is a Bit of a Life, Adventures in Anxiety by Georgia Pritchett. I loved it. This is written from an anxious person's point of view. She's always been anxious. She's always going to be anxious. And she writes from within that. And interestingly, the structure of it, I thought, really worked. The chapters are very, very short. We're talking a paragraph sometimes, two paragraphs, many chapters that are just a page, many chapters that are just a page and a half. Very, very short. And I kept trying to think of this book structured differently if she had taken out all the chapter breaks and just put them in sequence, it would have felt different. Sometimes I feel like the very short chapters can be kind of a gimmick, but in this case it wasn't. It worked beautifully and it made it feel really fast paced, and I just thought it was beautifully written. So I can recommend that. And what was the other one I wanted to tell you about? Oh, this came to my mind because somebody else was asking something different. And I remembered A Thousand Ways to Pay Attention by Rebecca Schiller, or in the UK, I think it's called Earthed. But A Thousand Ways to Pay Attention, Rebecca Schiller. It's one of those pastoral memoirs, where the person is writing about living on the land, living on the farm, dealing with farm stuff, which is a genre of memoir I really enjoy. And this is a woman who is realizing that there's something wrong with the way her brain works, and she doesn't know what it is, what is going on. And spoiler, it is, well, it's not a spoiler because it's in the title, but she has ADHD and doesn't know it until kind of the end of the book. And I had I think I'm very fond of it because I had an interesting response while reading it. I don't read the backs of books. And when I read it, it was still called Earthed, and it just looked like a pastoral memoir. So I picked it up. And it turned into this mystery where she's having this brain stuff happen to her throughout the book. And I'm really relating. I'm relating with everything she is saying. This is the way I am too. And she's going and looking for tumors and looking for, getting brain scans and trying to figure this out. And then she is diagnosed with ADHD. And I realized, oh yeah, that's how we're like. Our brains work exactly the same way in this case. Not all ADHD people or people with ADHD react in the same ways to similar things, but Rebecca Schiller and I do. And I just found it to be very, very well written and lovely. And I think you might like it. So I wanted to recommend those. Thank you for asking, Jenny. I appreciate the question. All right. And the next and last question is from Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you so much. Stephanie says, I'm just going to read this out. I wanted to reach out and say thank you for all the support, encouragement, and advice you give to aspiring writers like myself, as well as fantastic interviews on your podcast. I've dreamt of writing a novel since I was a teenager. I'm now in my late 30s, and over the years, I've made several attempts, all unsuccessful. Writing a novel always seemed like such a pipe dream to me. I knew in my heart that I had a story to tell, but it felt overwhelming and impossible and scary. So I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And then in 2020, I became a mom and was looking for ways to stay engaged with writing, even though I wasn't actually doing any writing at the time. That's when I found your podcast. And let me tell you, this chance discovery changed my life. Over the past few years, I've learned so much from you and your guests. You demystified the writing process and made me believe that writing a novel was something I could actually do. And I did it. In November 2021, I completed my first NaNoWriMo. And while that story won't be going anywhere, it did pave the way for the novel I am working on now, a story I'm super excited about. Since completing the first draft in March, oh my God, I've put the manuscript away. My family runs a small farm, and this is our busy season, so I'm holding off on revision until fall. But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've made some big changes in my mind that I believe make it a stronger story. My question is, do I write another first draft or revise the original first draft? I feel like I have more than enough material to write a whole new first draft. And part of me wants to because these changes are so significant. Example, combining two characters into one, major plot changes, etc. But I don't want to waste time or what I've already written. I know it's not really a waste because it's all getting to me to where I want to go, but you know what I mean. Is this a common thing that happens to writers, especially pantsers, which I learned I am, during drafting? And if so, what do they do? Can a second draft be more or less another first draft, just more fleshed out? Is it just semantics? Doesn't matter what I call it. I like the forward momentum of working on draft number 2, but I don't want to skip ahead merely for the sake of progress. Any advice would be much appreciated. Thank you again for all the good work you do for writers and readers. I am 100% certain that I would only be dreaming about writing a novel rather than revising a completed draft if it weren't for you. So thank you. Anyway, thanks. That is an amazing email, question, comment, Stephanie, and thank you so much for asking it. And I feel very happy and grateful and humbled. And to answer your question, there's so many different ways one can do it. A way that people don't talk about doing it, but does work for certain people. I do not think this would work for me. It works for one of my very good friends. I've seen students use this technique very well, is to write the first draft and then put it in a drawer, not get it out, and rewrite the second draft with everything that they know and have learned from writing that first draft. They don't consult it again. That is an absolutely fine way to go. That makes me feel terrified. So probably I should do it someday. But it is an absolutely time-tested way to go. For me, when the way that I like to do it, and this is truly dealer's choice, this is truly the way that you think might work best for you. There is no best or better way to do any of this. For me, what I do, even if I have major, major changes to make, huge ones like you're talking about, I prefer to stay in the draft that I have written. Why do I prefer that? I think it has to do exactly with what you said. I don't want to feel like all is lost. I don't want to feel that way. And also, like you, I know that all is not lost. Even if I were to quote unquote throw away that whole first draft, nothing is really wasted. Nothing is thrown away because it's all informing the book that wants to be, that wants to exist. But for me, what I do is I do, and this is if you Google Rachael Herron revision and this podcast, a podcast episode will come up on when I talk about this in a little bit more detail. But what I do is a sentence outline. I basically write down everything that is actually in the book, not what I imagine should be in the book or how I want to change it. But I write down plot points of what is in the book. And then this is usually on a spreadsheet. And then in another column, I have everything that I want to change. everything that I want to add, everything that I want to speed up or slow down or combine. So I have all these notes in this column. And then I have a lot of questions to myself that I can't answer yet. And I usually keep those on Post-its so I can look at them all the time and shuffle them around. And then I generally start from the beginning and start making the changes that I see. If chapter 1 is not the chapter 1 that I think that I might want at this point in this draft, I change it. I rewrite it. I throw the old one out. I rewrite the new one, or I write into the chapter that's already there. The only thing that I will say is that sometimes, and many of you may have felt this, when we have, say, a scene already on the page and we want it to change, and we try to affect that scene on a micro level just by changing sentences here and there, trying to get it to do different work, sometimes we can feel so close to it, so in the weeds that we can't quite make it happen. We just feel like we're pushing and pushing, but we're not making the changes we want to. At that point, a lot of times I will pop out and I will realize that I'm struggling, and I'll say to myself, okay, self, this is one of those times, just rewrite the scene with what you know about the old scene and what you want the scene to do. Rewrite it, do a fast draft of this um, to fit where you want it to. The thing about revision, especially this second draft, to remember is that a second draft, you're only trying to make the plot make a little bit more sense. And you're trying to make the character a little bit more complete, having a better arc than she did in the first draft. We are not trying to write a good book. Nobody can make a book from a first draft into a good draft in one pass. Almost no one. There's probably somebody who can, but they are few and far between, and they've been doing this a while. Most of us do multiple rounds of drafts, each one getting a little bit easier and better. So we've got the makes sense draft because it didn't make that much sense last time, especially how we're changing it. And then I like to talk about draft 3 as the makes more sense draft. And right about draft 4 is where I start getting into a place where I could possibly show part of it to people. I could start talking to my agent about it or looking to hire an editor. And then I do a lot of smaller passes on things that I just don't worry about in the earlier revisions. I don't revise or add or change things like setting because I do all that at once at the end. When I know those scenes are going to stay, I add a little setting. I add more character description. I just don't do the things I don't like to do until very late when those scenes have earned their place in the book. There, that was the very fast abbreviated version of how to do draft 2 in whatever way that looks like for you. That is my method. Some people do put it in a drawer and start all over. And what sounds best to you. And also just congratulations, Stephanie, on such a huge accomplishment. Remember that, I can't remember where the stat comes from, but it's a stat that people toss around that say 80% of people say they want to write a book, and 97% of those who start a book never finish it. So you are such an outlier. Everyone who listens to the show is an outlier. We're not like the rest of them. We're taking this seriously. We're taking ourselves seriously as writers, which is so incredibly important and something that you deserve to do. And indeed, you have done, Stephanie, and I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. And oh my gosh, you live on a farm. How cool. I hope that the busy farm season treats you well. And yeah, keep me posted with all of the things that you do and decide to do, because I'm so excited for you and this process. And thank you for asking this beautiful question. All right, let's get into the interview with Kristina. Here is her bio. Kristina Forest is an author of romance books for young adults. Her novels include I Want to Be Where You Are, Now That I Found You, Zyla and Kai, and The Neighbor Favor. She earned her MFA in creative writing at the New School, and she can often be found rearranging her bookshelf. The Partner Plot is her most recent release. Please enjoy the interview. Please enjoy your writing. Do some. That's the only way we get work done. That's the only way we get books done. So we do a little bit of work that might feel a little bit subpar when we're doing it, but we fix it later. All right. Happy writing. I'm so glad you're here. Here we go. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm Kristina Forest, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Welcome to the show. Right before we started recording, Christina was saying that it's warm where she is, and I was like, "Oh, that must be nice." My listeners have heard, but our furnace has gone out too, so it was like 45 degrees in the house this morning. So
Oh my
that's
gosh.
that's why I'm wearing like 17 layers. So please enjoy the warm.
Yeah, I have like a fan blowing on me. That's why I was like, I need the AirPods because it's the windows open, the fan's blowing. It's way too hot.
Yes, yes, that's awesome. Well, would you please tell us about your writing process? Because you are prolific, you get books done. How and where does this all fit into your life?
Yeah, so I write full time now. I didn't always. I started writing full time as of summer 2022. So it's been about
Yay.
2 years that I've been writing full time. Yeah, and so I am a pretty big outliner, but I start my process with just jotting down thoughts that come to me, mostly like in my notes app or sometimes in my notebook, but mostly it's my notes app. If I get a story idea, and then I just let it percolate in my head for a little bit, and then once I feel like it's like honestly, it depends on timing. If it's
Mhm.
time for me to pitch a new idea, then I look through, what I've had, or sometimes
Yeah.
an idea is just like calling for attention in the back of my head, and that's when I know it's ready to come out of the notes app. So the step that I do after that is I use a plot pyramid. It's called Freytag's plot pyramid, and it has the beginning, inciting incident, climax, and ending. And I try to plot point out the idea on that, just like the major points to carry the story. And if an idea passes that test, then I know I can move on to the next page,
Okay, that is
which
so smart because so many of us, and I'm talking about me, I write a book and I'm like, oh yeah, I have no idea about an ending. Never thought about it. Like,
Yeah, I've got to know the beginning, middle, and the sometimes the end changes. I have
yeah,
obviously because I write romance, I always know it's gonna end in an HEA or a happily ever
yeah.
after. But I sort of like to have an idea of kind of like how I'm gonna get there. And then I usually lately it's like I have to write a synopsis so that my editor will approve it. And so that starts like the synopsis rewrite stage. I sort of have a general overall idea of the story in my head. Things inevitably change as I'm actually writing. But overall, I kind of have this general direction of where I'm going. Then I usually, I have like a character questionnaire that I do because I really need to know a character's internal and external desires and goals before I start writing because otherwise I'll just be putting around and I can't, I feel like I'm wasting time. I know
Yeah.
some authors love that and they find it like exploratory. That drives me nuts. And so I just know that, however many books into my career I'm in, I like to know where I'm going. And so then after that, I usually try to write uh, uh, the first fourth, which is like the beginning to the inciting incident freehand to try to see where it
Oh,
takes me.
interesting.
And then just, I have like a general idea of what needs to happen. But I like to get to the inciting incident, just kind of like feeling my way.
Can
And
we
then
go
once I'm at
nerdy?
the
Will you tell me like what you write in? Are you in a journal? Are you in like a three-ring
no,
notebook?
well, I'll have like I'll go chapter by chapter. Well, like point by point. This needs to happen. This needs to happen. This happens.
Ah,
This happens. Then inside instant. So I have like a general like sentence, like very
yeah.
quick plot in my notebook, and then I know that's what I need to write in that chapter. And so I go like that till I get to the inciting incident, and then once I'm there is when I start to plot really hardcore, like poster board, post-it notes. Um, because even though things change along the way, I like to have a general idea of when I'm going to finish a first draft because then I like to build in a month by myself to print out the draft, read it over, edit it that way, then go back in, edit it again. I honestly do like 3 rounds by myself before I send to my editor. And the reason for that is because I like to get my vision in place as much as possible
Yeah.
before I let someone else read it because then I'll feel like there are too many cooks in the kitchen. Um, That's generally my
I
process.
love this answer, and I also do about the same number of rounds. And I think that that is
Yeah,
that's I always think of this as like doing the editor a courtesy, because if I give her a total hot
yeah,
mess, then she is distracted by all of the mess. Whereas if I give her a sturdy, well constructed, well written story that has structural problems or character problems, she
yeah,
can say she could do her magic and say this is where you're dropping this. So it pays, I think, to do that.
for sure. And I think doing all that work and all that legwork in the beginning, it just makes the revision process, like you're saying, so much smoother. And I always think it's funny because my editor will be like, "Your writing is so clean, and you make my job so easy." And I always say to her, "You're seeing the third draft. You did not see the original iteration of this story because you would not be saying that."
And you would think that this would be a typical experience, but I have writer friends who literally write up to the, last hour. It's their first draft and they hit send to their editor
I
because it's due.
know.
I would
Yeah.
die. I would have a heart attack and die.
That's definitely that's what's so fascinating about being a writer and being a creative. It's just like people just have so like our processes are so different, and
Mhm.
it really fascinates me because like you're saying, I could never. It would keep me up at night knowing that I had not read over the draft before sending it.
Oh, no, I
I
would
couldn't
I
do
would
it.
if I sent it and then I would be expecting the phone call the next day, you're fired. You can't do, now we see. Now we see what you really do. And
Right.
we
It's just
don't want it.
no way. Yeah.
What is the most exciting thing you've ever learned about your writing process?
Well, I guess the most exciting part, honestly, is every time I finish a book because it's literally like you pulled this idea from thin air, just
Hmm.
your imagination, or you sometimes you get inspiration from different things, but it's like you took this little seed and planted it, and it's an entire book now. That always surprises me. Because like while you're writing a first draft, I don't know if you do this, but like I am constantly like, am I gonna finish? Will I
Oh,
ever finish this?
totally.
And it just feels like I'm creating the worst piece of art to ever exist on the planet. And that
And we're
is
not
in the back of my
exaggerating.
head,
That's
right?
how I feel.
Like
Yeah. This
literally
is the
how
one.
I feel. Like this, oh God, this is going to be the worst book. This is really going to do it. This is where I'm going to lose all my readers. And it always surprises me when I get to the end, like the end, like when it's off the copy edits, I'm reading over first pass or whatever. I'm like, oh no, wait, I did it. Wow. It's like it really feels revolutionary every single time. And so I guess to me, that's like the biggest surprise every
Oh,
book. I'm like, I can't believe you actually finished this. So
and it's so funny, and nobody else doubts us, but
right. They're like,
we
of
doubt
course. But
ourselves.
I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. What part of writing do you struggle with most?
the first draft. The first draft is always pretty hard for me because I am a perfectionist, and the idea of writing a shitty first draft, although it takes me so long to just accept it, that it's not going to come out of my head completely
I s-
perfect.
I
Like,
hate that so much. It's the
yeah,
worst.
and it's like I feel like I've gotten better at accepting, like I just need to push through, get to the end, because you can't, I really do feel like I'm a much better reviser than I am a drafter. And it's like you can't revise what's not there. Um, but it's excruciating. It feels like the metaphor that I always give is like it feels like taking your brain is a washcloth and you're just wringing it every day, trying to get a little bit of moisture out, like trying your hardest, and
Yeah.
it feels so draining. So that's definitely the part that I struggle with the most, I would say.
Oh, wow. And as I'm more of a discovery writer, not an outliner, I wish I was. But when I
Mm-hmm.
hear about outliners, my head automatically jumped that like you have a great outline and then the first draft is easy. And I forget first drafts are never easy.
They're never easy, yeah.
Yeah.
And because then, like with me for outlining, and I was like, is this outline horrible? It's just what what did I set out to write? I don't know if
Yeah.
this is actually working. So
I have fooled
yeah,
myself terribly with outlines that I wrote the outline. I thought I could pull it off. And I've also done it with synopses where like I fooled my agent and my editor that they thought it was a good idea. And then I get to a certain point in the synopsis, I'm like, did you not notice that this can't happen?
I
And
know.
nope. No, of course not, because I wanted to write this book and I made everybody think I could do it, smoke and mirrors, and then we have to do it.
Exactly. Writing the synopsis is so fun because it's just like, here's this idea. It could be so great. Like the possibility
It's
is
gonna be so
amazing.
great. Yeah, you will
Right.
never see a thing like this again. Just a big lie.
Right.
That's awesome. What are you really, really good at writing wise?
I would like to say or think that I'm good at dialogue and writing
Ooh,
like funny dialogue. I think that because I write romantic comedies, I don't I think that the humor in my books comes out through dialogue and through the things that people say to each other. Sometimes in like a main character's internalized thoughts, like they'll think funny things.
yeah.
But I really think the humor comes across in the dialogue that I write, and that the dialogue feels realistic.
What tips would you give a writer who's struggling to bring out the funny in their dialogue or to bring their dialogue to life?
Yeah, eavesdrop on conversations. Honestly, listen to what people are saying around you. You know, people sometimes say really funny things and like the cadence and the rhythm and just like how people talk, just like kind of listen to it. I'd also say read your dialogue out loud because read your whole draft out loud in general, but like read your dialogue specifically because then you can say, oh, this actually doesn't sound like something somebody would say. And also, I would say keep track of voice, right? Like your
Mm-hmm.
character's voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something I try to shoot for is like if I did not include dialogue tags in this conversation, I would still want the reader to know who's speaking because each character talks differently. You know, they've got their own spin on how they say things. So that's something else I would say.
Do you find that that last is something that you really hone in revision, or does that kind of come naturally to you? Because I feel like for myself, I never really know what the
Hmm.
voices are until I've been a couple times through it myself.
I would say for the most part, dialogue does come naturally to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you perfect it in revision, but like out the gate, dialogue is usually the easiest for me to have to edit.
Oh, that's delicious. That's awesome. That's awesome. What is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
Uh, so what comes to memory most recently, um, in March, I think it was March/April. My most recent book hit the USA Today bestseller list, which is really nice.
Congratulations. That
Yeah,
was
thank
the partner plot,
you.
right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's
And that was
amazing.
the first time a book of mine had ever hit a bestsellers list. So I bought myself a pair of expensive shoes that I had been thinking about for a while, but I could not justify the purchase. And so then that happened. I was like, I think I should do something nice for myself, and so that's what I did.
I love that. What brand shoe?
Sandy Liang, she has like a lot of Mary Janes, like flat Mary
Mm,
Janes, and I had been wanting a pair of just like regular flat shoes that I could wear with like nice outfits. So I got a pair of
that is, I used to buy Fluvogs
those.
when I would sell a book, and yeah, I love a good shoe celebratory purchase. That is
Yeah, because it's like,
fantastic.
and it's useful, like you're gonna wear the shoe. It's not gonna feel like it was
Yeah.
a waste of money. So yeah,
Yeah. I remember I bought a pair of Fluvogs in the Brooklyn store and then walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. And then I'm like, these, and they were heels and they were so comfortable. And I still have those shoes. I got rid of a lot of shoes when we moved here, but
nice.
I still have those. Yes. Will you
Yeah.
please tell us a specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins?
Um, so I guess I was always a writer and I always enjoyed doing it. I really liked picture prompts in school, during like standardized tests. I don't even know if they still do those anymore for students, but I
I don't
really
know, but
loved
I also
them.
loved them. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I'll say when I was in college, I took a creative writing class for the first time, and at the end of the semester, my creative writing professor had pulled me aside and like encouraged me to take another class that following
Mm.
semester. And then I was like, oh, it was honestly having encouragement from my creative writing professors in undergrad that like this thing that I was just doing for fun and thought was a hobby, like people saw potential in that. So I would say like college.
I love that. And what a gift they gave you to say that, to pull you aside and
Yeah,
say
for
that it changed
sure.
changed everything, right?
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever told that person who pulled you aside where you are now? Have you ever caught up with them?
You know what? I have not talked to her in a really long time because she wasn't like on like I was trying to find her on Facebook or like
Hmm.
on LinkedIn. I can't remember. It was one of those. Um, but I could not find her. She's actually a
Mm.
published author. Her name is Julia McDowell. That's her professor name. I can't
Mm.
remember if she used the same last name for her book. She wrote like a women's fiction. Um, but yeah, I have not
I bet she would love to
talked to
hear that. If
her in
anybody
so
knows her
long.
who's listening, please send her this podcast. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Would you tell us about the best book that you have read recently and why did you love it?
So I will preface this by saying I've done a terrible job at reading this year. Horrible. I'm like appalled. I've read maybe 7 books in total this year, and a lot of it is because deadlines, just
Yes. That's
life
still
things
more
get in
than
the
the
way.
average bear. Than.
Yeah, yeah. But at this point, usually midway point, almost through the year, I'd be at like 15 books. I read like 30 books on average a year.
Mhm.
So I'm just like disgusted with my reading habits this year. Gotta be honest. However, a book that I read earlier this year. So my favorite book that I read so far this year, is a book called Love in Other Words by Kristina Lauren. It actually came
Mm.
out like, oh gosh, a while ago. Might have been almost 10 years ago that it
Mhm.
originally published. But it sort of toes the line between romance and women's fiction. It's
Mhm.
a second chance romance story about these two people who were childhood best friends. And it sort of, the book goes back and forth between when they first met as kids, growing up as teenagers, when they like fell in love, and what their lives are like now as adults when they meet again after, I think it's about 10 years or something like
Mhm.
that. It's like a long time has passed. So I just thought it was such a beautiful story, and I still think about scenes from that book so often. So
Oh,
that was definitely probably my favorite book that I've read so far this year.
that's when you know it hit, when you keep thinking about it. Because I can often love a book and then close the cover, and the next day I couldn't tell you anything about it. But when
Right.
scenes stay,
Mm-hmm.
that says something really, really big to me. Speaking about awesome
Yeah.
scenes and awesome books, will you please tell us a little bit about the partner plot?
Yes. So funny enough, the Partner Plot is also a second chance
Second chance.
romance about yeah, about Violet and Xavier, who were high school sweethearts. They thought they had very passionate, tight bonds when they were in high school, and they thought they would get married, but they broke up in college. And a decade later, they happen to reunite in Las Vegas. And after a night of partying, they wake up with wedding rings on their fingers. And they decide it's actually a fake marriage. It's convenience. They did like a fake ceremony, but something happens where like people find out about what they did, so they have to keep the lie going to preserve different things in their careers. So yeah, that's the
And
partner plot.
hijinks ensue.
For sure. Yeah.
And where can we find you online?
So I on my website, which is KristinaForest.com. I'm also on Instagram at KristinaForest underscore. I am on TikTok at Kristina Forest One, and on Twitter, which I don't use very often anymore, but just at Kristina Forest.
Thank you so much for being here today. It was a total treat to talk to you.
It's so nice talking to you. Thank you for having me.